Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is one-third the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's a subject we don't like to talk about, but we have to. Managing our money. Are you up to your eyeballs in credit card debt? When you hear financial advisors say you need enough money in your checking account to cover 6 to 9 months, is your reaction, yeah, right? Are rising gas and food prices causing you heartburn? Do you even have a budget? Up next on Another View, some practical, real-life money advice from financial empowerment champion Andrea Taylor. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we get started on our conversation about dollar bills, y'all, a couple of announcements. First and foremost, thank you to our listening audience for our very successful membership drive last week. We here at Another View exceeded our $2,000 challenge tremendously. And we are so very, very grateful to each and every one of you who called in, who made a pledge of support, who became a member of WHRV and in support of Another View. We are eternally grateful. So thank you for that. And if you haven't made your pledge, there's still plenty of time. 1-800-940-7740, I believe is the number. I hope I said that right. At any rate, thank you again for all of your support. And the Another View family is also sending words of love, encouragement, and condolences to Todd Washburn, our audio engineer, on the loss of his mom, and to Dr. Eric Claville, who is a regular on our show, and the loss of his dad, both this week. And we want you all to know that we love you and that we are here for you. So just wanted to let everyone know, because we are a family here at Another View. We definitely are. So the gap between black and white wealth continues to widen. In 2020, the median net worth of African American households was $24,000. The median net worth of white households, $189,000. Yet at the same time, the buying power of blacks rose to $1.6 trillion, or 9% of the nation's total buying power. So where's the disconnect? Why are we so in debt and not able to save? And what about generational wealth through home ownership? And what do we do about all of this? Joining us with some practical, real-world advice is financial educator Andrea Taylor. Andrea, you are a passionate person. You call yourself a financial empowerment champion. And why is that so important to you?
Thank you, Barbara. I'm so happy to be here. The reason I'm a financial empowerment champion is I made all the wrong mistakes. I made all the mistakes that everybody else makes. And when I went to look to get out of the hole I dug myself in, all the workshops that I attended, they were all taught by people who had never made any mistakes. And I said, they just haven't been there. They don't understand where I'm coming from. And so I decided that once I got out of that hole, that I was going to go out and spread the money management message and do it from a perspective of someone who's been there.
So this is a personal passion of yours. And I know that you're teaching some classes through Bancorp and Hampton Roads, which is a great program that teaches financial literacy and so forth. But what was happening in your life that made you go, whoa, I gotta change some things.
Okay. Well, Barbara, I like to say I've had 3 money philosophies in my life. And the first one was easy come, easy go. Money came in, money went out. And at the end of my time with that philosophy, I was $50,000 in credit card debt.
Wow.
I believed that credit cards were my friend. I had 10 of those good friends, every color, gold, platinum, you name it, I had it. And all of them were maxed out. So if an emergency happened, I didn't have any savings to go to. I didn't have any money. I was broke. I was making good money, but I was broke. And then I changed jobs, and I went from being paid every week, when it's easy to float things when you know you're going to get a check the next week. I got a new job where I was getting paid once a month.
Yeah, that's a whole different way.
It's a whole different way. And I went from easy come, easy go to there is too much month at the end of my money. And I had to learn to do things differently.
So what was the first thing that you decided to do after you realized, okay, this has to change because I can't continue to sustain?
The first thing I did was, like everybody else, I tried to get an easy fix. So my easy fix was I consolidated all of that debt so that I would have a smaller payment. And I had a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan for paying off that $50,000. But I did not change my behavior. So even though I said I had $50,000 in debt, I actually had it twice, because as I was paying off that $50,000, I was building my credit card balance back up to $50,000. So when I paid off that loan, I was back in $50,000 in debt again. So the second time, what I had to do was I had to change my behavior. I had to stop using my credit cards, and I had to come up with a real plan for paying off that debt instead of just a wish for being debt free.
So is that the beginning for us, and particularly as we're talking about the Black community, is this whole attitude about money? What is our attitude about money overall, and what should it be compared to what it is?
Okay. I think we have an attitude, and I'm just speaking for the people that I know, our attitude is that we aren't going to be able to get ahead, so we live for today. We go out and we buy, we do things that show what we think is wealth versus building real wealth. So I might have an expensive car. I might have expensive clothing or an expensive purse or an expensive shoes, things that people can see, instead of building real wealth, having money in my bank account, having investments that people can't see. So we need to go from showing wealth to actually accumulating wealth.
Isn't that hard to do, though, when we don't even talk about it? We rarely talk about it in our households. I mean, in terms of teaching our children or sitting down with our spouses or significant others, how do you have that money conversation?
Okay. We do need to talk about it, and if everybody who knows me, I talk about it. I'm asking them questions. I'm all up in their business. I'm trying my best to share the knowledge that I have, and I really, we need to have some transparency. We need to share our mistakes. We need to not hide them so that others can learn from our mistakes. But you're right, it starts with having a good conversation, because our children are learning from watching us, and there are things that they don't necessarily see. And so we need to let them understand, I'm struggling. I'm having trouble paying these bills. We need to cut back. I can't buy that for you now because I'm trying to get out of debt. So we need to have those conversations.
So you were $50,000 in debt. You took out the consolidation loan. You paid that off. You were still $50,000 in debt because you were using your credit cards. So what was the next plan?
Okay. So the next plan, I decided that, we've all heard this phrase, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you always got. Okay. And so that's what I did. I kept doing what I had always done. And so I had to take a look at my behaviors and figure out which behaviors were causing me to be in debt. Everybody has different behaviors. Mine was, I was a shopper. I was one of those people. I don't buy shoes. I'm not a shoe person, but I am a purse person. I am a luggage person. I probably had 20 pieces of nice luggage, and I really wasn't going anywhere. I just had the luggage. I had all of these nice purses. I had the Coach. I had there was a brand called Gurkha that they don't even have now. That that was the first big purse I bought. So I was spending my money on those things, and I realized that those things weren't helping me to get where I needed to go. Something else that really helped me was my mother retired, and my mother was an administrator for Norfolk Public Schools, so she made a very good salary. And when she retired, and I saw what she was going to get from Social Security, luckily she had pensions and other things. I realized that my plan of surviving off of Social Security wasn't going to do it. So my incentive was, I kept telling myself, I need to look out for old Andrea. So I wanted to one day retire. I wanted to one day have a comfortable living as a retired person. So I kept that goal. So everything was having to do with old Andrea. Old Andrea is going to need some money. Old Andrea does not need to be in debt. And that was the incentive that helped me.
So, Andrea, though, did somebody else help you, though, in terms of giving you the advice that you like to give people now in terms of what they need to do, starting with budgeting, say, for example? Is that where you started?
I actually, I thought I was good at budgeting. If somebody had told me, Andrea, you need to budget, I would have sworn that I was good at budgeting because I always paid my bills on time. I had very good records, and I can tell you, even now, I still have those records going back from when I first went into the workforce in 1982, what my bill was, how much I paid, what check number I used. What I found out is I was great at record keeping. I wasn't good at budgeting. Okay. And so
what's the difference?
Well, in my mind, budgeting, I am planning how I'm going to spend my money before the month comes. So I sit down and I know this month I'm going to get this amount of money. These are the bills that I'm expecting. This is how much money I'm going to put in savings. This is how much I'm going to put towards different goals. Whereas record keeping, I was just keeping track of the money I was spending, but I was spending it without a plan. And that's how I ended up in credit card debt, because I would spend my money without a plan, and then it was time for me to, do something, and I wouldn't have the money to do it. But instead of telling myself, well, you don't have the money to do it, don't do it, I say, charge it.
And is that one of the big things, too, that people, because if they have credit, it's so easy to say charge it as opposed to being disciplined enough to say, nope, if I can't pay cash for it, I should wait.
It's very easy to charge it. If you've ever gone to a store and you're shopping and you get up to the register, the first thing they ask you is if you want to apply for a card because you can get 10% off. That 10% costs you a lot of money, because you get that savings for that day, but now you have another credit card, and many of us, I was not disciplined, and so then I would just consider that money for me to use and money for me to live off of. Mm-hmm. You asked about advice. I had a lot of good advice, but it took a long time for me to actually put that advice to use. Mm-hmm. So when I decided that I wanted to change my ways, all of those voices of all of those people who had talked to me, it came back to me. And so I had that information, I had internalized that information. I just hadn't utilized that information.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're just talking about how to get our finances under control. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So what's the biggest hurdle that you've seen people have to go over in order to start to get their finances in order?
Okay. The first thing you have to do, the biggest hurdle, is to make that decision that you want to do it and decide that you can do it. As long as we say, I can't with the amount of money I make. I can't because of this, that, or the other. I'm a single parent. I can't because, as long as you think you can't, you will not be able to. But when you start thinking, I can do this, I just need to learn how to do this, I think then that starts us along that that path to making a change.
So in the tease, I talked about the fact that financial advisors say you should have 6 to 9 months worth of savings for a rainy day kind of thing. How do you start to work towards that, or is that realistic? If you are a single parent, or if you're not, even in a 2-parent household, there could be, other debts that you have. How do you get to that point?
Okay. It is realistic. We can do it. We just have to start. I think what we start thinking of is that 6 months, and that's a big number. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we need to start with actionable steps. Instead of thinking I need $10,000, think I'm going to save $25 a pay period. And over time, that money is going to build up. But now here's a trick that I use. I put my emergency fund in a bank in a credit union that I don't have a debit card to, so I make it very hard on myself to go and get that money out. And then I also automate that. So every month when my paycheck comes into my main bank, I have it set up to automatically transfer a certain amount of savings to that other bank, to that other account. So if you automate it and tell yourself, no matter what, I'm not going to stop that, then over time it builds up. I remember when I was doing my retirement savings when I first started, and when I got to $10,000, which I had never had $10,000 to my name, I remember telling my mother, I like savings. I didn't know that I liked it because I had never done it before. I was the kind who would put the money in the savings account at the beginning of the month, and by the end of the month, I was taking it out.
Yeah. So people talk a lot about credit scores, and clearly, at some point, you had a really good credit score if you were getting all those credit cards. But there is a question from Facebook. They want to know what's the quickest way to improve your credit score.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you the quickest way is to mess it up, and then if you reverse that, then you're going to be in good shape. So the credit score is made up of 5 components. The 2 largest ones are payment history. So that's 35%. Pay your bills on time. Pay the amount that you're supposed to pay and pay it on time. That's 35% of your score. Now, what we want to do is, as soon as we start paying bills, we want to see an immediate effect. It took us a long time to mess up our credit. It takes a while to turn this around. The second one is 30% is credit utilization. So that means having your credit cards maxed out. So let's say you have 4 credit cards and each one has a $10,000 limit and you have $5,000 that you owe on each of those. So you owe $20,000, but you have a limit of $40,000. So that gives you like a 50% utilization. You've only utilized 50%. Mm-hmm. That's better than you have 2 credit cards with $10,000 limits and you owe $10,000 on it, because now you have used 100% of the credit that was available to you. And so even though the amount is the same, you get dinged because you don't have any available balance. That available balance shows that you have control, that you're not using all that you were given. Okay, so that's 30% of your credit score. So right there, 65%. So
that's 65% right there.
That's 65%. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then what else do they take into consideration? How many you have?
They take into consideration the length of your credit history. So, in the old days, we would say, hey, close down all of your credit. If you want to get out of debt, shut down all of your credit accounts. You want to at least keep the oldest one open. Because if your oldest one was 15 years ago, you opened it, versus you keep one that you just opened 6 months ago. Okay, so they're looking at the length of your credit history. They look at your credit mix. What type of credit do you have? Do you have all store credit cards? Do you have national credit cards? Do you have installment loans, such as a car payment or mortgage? And then the other 10% is new credit. Are you still out there getting credit?
If you've messed up your credit and you're trying to get back on track, and notice some people get these notices that say, we'll help you rebuild your credit. So we'll give you this $500 limit, and it can go up in 2 months if you pay it on time. Is that a smart move?
Personally, I would not do that. Now, here's why. They can only help you a little bit because your history is made up of all of the accounts that you have. It's not made up of just that one. So the fact that you're paying that $500 back on time and you're paying everything else back late, that doesn't help you. Okay. So if you want to improve your credit, you need to work on everything that's on your credit report. There's no quick fix out there, and people try to sell us on a quick fix. So there are no quick fixes out there.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. David joins us from Norfolk. Hi, David. You're on the air.
Hello, Miss Emily.
Hi.
Hello.
Miss Taylor, my father used to work for Norfolk Public Schools as well. My question was, how can you find out about legitimate debt cancellation loans?
How can you find out about legitimate debt or what?
Debt consolidation loans.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Legitimate ones. So you can get places where you can go to get a debt consolidation loan are local credit unions might offer you a personal loan. Some of us, you might be able to get an increase on a credit card and consolidate your debt that way. I got mine through a credit union. Now, what do you mean by an illegitimate one? I think if you get the money, now I'll give you an example of an illegitimate one. Back in my desperate days when I was first trying to get out of credit and I wasn't doing it the right way, I looked in the newspaper and I saw an ad for, get out of debt, one of those ads in the back. Mm-hmm. And when they ask you for money up front, in order to get the loan, that's a big red flag that it is not legitimate. Okay. So it shouldn't cost you to get a consolidation loan. So I say that's your red flag.
Okay. Thanks so much for the call, David. We appreciate that. Lee wants to know, he's sending us a note from Facebook. Should everyone have a credit card?
You can actually get along without a credit card. Not everyone needs one, so I'm not going to say that everybody has one. But if you do have one, you need to use it responsibly. So I still have credit cards, but I pay them off in full. I no longer carry debt. I'm now debt averse. So for convenience, I use a credit card. But
at the end of the month, you pay the full balance?
I don't even necessarily wait until the end of the month. So if I've made a charge, I go right onto my bill pay and I pay it then. So I don't necessarily wait until the end of the month. Okay. But if you don't have a credit card, I know there are people out there that says everybody has to have one. Everybody has to have a credit score. It's good if you have a good credit score. It's easier to do certain things if you have credit, but it's not impossible if you don't have a credit card.
So what about people who say, I just want to live on cash? I pay everything in cash and so forth. Is that harmful for you if you're trying to buy a house or if you're trying to get a car, for example, or some other major purchase?
Okay. Well, with the house, there are banks out there that, back in the day before they had credit scores, there was something called manual underwriting. And so you would go to the bank and they would look at your complete history. You would bring your papers, you would bring your tax returns or your pay stubs and your bills, and they would look at it and determine whether or not you were a good credit risk. A credit score is a shortcut. But when you get a mortgage, they're still going to do that. But there are companies out there that do specialize in manual underwriting. And so it is possible to get a mortgage, even if you've never had a credit card, but you probably have had bills along the way. You probably have savings and investments to show them. So it is possible. It is easier if you have a good credit score, but it's not impossible if you don't.
One of the things that I noticed in reading during the background for this is that within the African American community, we are bank averse. There are many people who do not have checking accounts, savings accounts. traditional banks versus online banks. First of all, should everybody have a bank account? And then if so, which direction should they go?
Okay. Well, it's less costly if you have a bank account. So it's cheaper, if you have direct deposit, if you have an employer who will deposit your checks, your paychecks, many times you can get a checking account that does not have any fees associated with it. Versus I get my paycheck and I have to go to a check cashing place or go to a store that will cash the check. That's going to be costly. And then I'm going to need to get money orders to pay my bills. The reason I think that many of us are bank averse is that we've made mistakes along the way, and those mistakes have been costly. Maybe we have paid a lot in overdraft fees. I remember my very first checking account when I was in college, and back in the day, just to give some of you all a feel for how long ago that was, I wrote a check for pizza, which was $5. Okay, I wrote a check for pizza, $5, and then I forgot to include that check in my register. So then I wrote a lot of other small checks because I would go to the student center and get an ice cream cone and write a check for 26 cents. I mean, that's how crazy I was. And so I had all of these checks to come in and they were bouncing because I forgot to write down this one $5 check. And I think that has happened to a lot of us on a much larger scale. And so what we've done is we've blamed the banks for our problem when really it was our problem for not keeping track of our balance, and so we got into trouble. The good news is a lot of banks are now phasing out overdraft fees, and they are lowering some of their other fees, so that's a good thing. But if you don't have a relationship with a bank or a financial institution, I'll just say financial institution, when you want to, when life's emergencies happen, for example, and you need money in a hurry, you have a relationship, and that relationship helps them to determine whether or not to give you the loan, and you end up using fewer of the predatory lenders.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about managing our money with financial educator Andrea Taylor. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Jerry joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Jerry. You're on the air. Hello, Jerry. Are you there? Excuse me. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. You're on the air.
Yeah, I like what your speaker had said a few minutes ago about utilization, because that's what I used to help bring my finances under control. I kept my spending utilization under 30%, and I think if you can do that, I think that's one of the first steps in getting your spending under control is that 30% utilization.
Okay, thank you, Jerry, for the call.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and as long as you have the discipline to do so, that's good. I didn't want people to think that when I talked about utilization that the idea is to go out and get a whole bunch of other credit cards so that their usage to utilization, is lower. What we need to do instead is to pay down what we have and get under that 30% that Jerry just mentioned.
What about payday loans?
Payday loans can be very costly. There's an article that I always like to share in my classes, and it's about an Ohio man. You can find it. You can Google it. Just Google, man pays $50,000 for payday loans. He took out $2,500 in loans, five $500 loans. He had an emergency, and it took him 10 years to pay those loans off. So what he kept having to do was to pay the fee to continue the loan. And by the time he got out of it, he had paid $50,000 in fees for $2,500 in loans.
What is it that we don't know about buying major things like cars or like appliances or furniture in terms of buying it and negotiating for it and credit for it? What do we need to know?
That's a great question, Barbara. I'm glad you asked that. I'm going to talk about one of the biggest purchases, which is buying that car. Okay. And I'm going to start off with a story of my own. My father bought a new car, and he asked me to go with him to the dealership to pick it up. While he was picking it up and I was sitting in the showroom, now I had no intention of buying a car. I saw this car that I liked, and by the time he got his car, I had purchased a new car, okay, at an exorbitant interest rate. So what I had not done is I had not planned that purchase. It was purely an impulse buy, okay? It was purely an impulse buy. So we need to avoid those impulse buys.
That was an expensive impulse buy.
I liked the LeBaron. It was a nice car. I liked it. I did not enjoy paying for it for 5 years, and I did not enjoy my interest rate. So this is what I do now when I go to buy a car. The first thing that I do is I do my research and I figure out what a car is worth. Now, I no longer buy new cars. I buy a used car because when I buy a new car, when I drive off the lot, the value of it drops tremendously. But some people like that new car smell, and that's good too.
You can spray that.
But still, do your planning. Okay, so now when I go out car shopping, I know what it is that I want to buy. I know what kind of mileage I want to get on it, or if it was a new car, I can also do the same research. I go out to Edmunds.com, or you can go out to KellyBlueBook.com. There are other sites you can go to. So I know how much I want to pay. Then I get my financing in advance. I go to my credit union and I line up my financing for buying this car. So I do not have to go through the dealer in order to get my financing. Okay. So those are two things I do. Then when I go,
and that is to keep your interest rate down. Is that why?
Well, I know what I've already have an interest rate that's fixed, and I know exactly how much it's going to cost me if I spend up to the amount that I have.
Gotcha.
When I go to a dealership and I go through a dealership, the dealers are allowed to add on a little more money. They're allowed to bump up the interest rate that you may be approved for, and that's money that they get to use, get to keep to improve their profits. So I like to get my financing done up front. And then when I go in and negotiate, I'm never desperate. I'm willing to walk away. And I have walked away from some cars that looked really good and I really liked them, but I knew that there was another car that was going to be just as good that I would find later on. And so when I negotiate, I've now liked negotiating. In the past, I just paid that sticker price, whatever was on there. I figured that's what I had to pay. And that's not true. That's not what you have to pay. And so you can negotiate.
Lesson I had to learn. Absolutely. Let's see. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Ed joins us from Hampton. Hi, Ed. You're on the air.
Yes. Okay. This program is wonderful.
Thank you.
It's the first time I have ever heard anything in this vein with any common sense and simplicity.
Thank you.
I have 2 postgraduate degrees. Okay, and I have never been good with money until I got into debt where I needed to change my behavior. I'll tell you, all through school, even through high school, I never learned one thing about money management. And I came from a good home, and, my parents handled money okay, but they never shared anything with me. My mother took care of everything. My dad was a worker. But anyway, in school, I heard nothing about finance. So I was in Vietnam after I was in school for a while, and I got PTSD, and that was a crazy. I'm still dealing with PTSD for after 30-some years, but now I'm getting a handle on it. Thank God.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of crazy things, especially finance. I spent everything I had. I became what they call codependent. And I just, just like the young lady said, I spent before the end of the month, And I did accumulate a credit card debt. Actually, I accumulated so much that I filed for bankruptcy twice. And thank God, I went through the court and they handled it. And so I had to start from scratch, not at a young age. I was probably 45, 50, maybe years old. I'm 82 now, thank God. But anyway, what caused me to get control was that I had a nephew who had a business, and we turned over all of my financial transactions to his secretary, and over 4 or 5 years, she's helped me to get out of debt, and now I'm in the black, and I have, I guess, maybe at least $10,000 in the bank.
Congratulations, Ed. Thanks so much for that call. We appreciate that. You know, he had someone to help him and to help him pull out of that. But a lot of people go through bankruptcies and everything else because we don't learn.
And going through the bankruptcy is very similar. You know, sometimes you have to go through the bankruptcy, and other times we do it because we think it's going to be a quick fix. But as he just mentioned, he went through it. His behaviors didn't change. He got right back in that same boat, just like I went through the consolidation. My behaviors didn't change. I ended back up in $50,000 in credit card debt again. So I've known people who've gone through bankruptcy 3, 4, 5 times, and it's okay. It's legal, so it's okay to do. But what you really want to do is use that as an opportunity to reset your behaviors so that you don't get yourself in that predicament again.
Same thing. So Congress just passed or just extended the student loan repayment through August. It was supposed to be up as of May. Would you advise people to, if they can, to go ahead and pay on that student loan anyway, or should they wait and continue the holiday?
Yeah, I'm now debt adverse, so I'm taking it from that point of view. Okay. The benefit of this hiatus is that interest has been frozen. So if people were making payments, they were making payments purely on the principal, and so you would see the balance go down. Come August, when they start making those payments again, they're going to be making payments, but the majority of it is going to be going to the interest, and the balances are going to be coming down, slowly. Yeah. So I would recommend to make the payments. Now, I have to say I have a nephew who has a student loan. I've told him to, but he likes not making that payment. So I understand, people... Now, if you're going to use that opportunity and don't do it, please use that money for something else, paying down some other debt, while you're not paying on your student loan.
Or put it in savings.
Use that to build up your emergency fund or to start investing.
People always ask the question about how do I get started with savings and stuff too. And when you get a raise, should you take that amount, that additional amount of money that you're getting, and put that in savings and continue to live on, the amount that you've gotten used to? Or what do you think?
That's real good in theory, Barbara, but that's hard to do. So I'll tell you what I did. When I started, I was 38 when I started investing in retirement, and I started off by putting in enough to get the match. And then what I did is every year when I got a raise, I took 1% of that and increase the amount that I was putting in my, retirement investing. So that way I wasn't totally putting it all. If you can do that, that's good. But yes, every year bumping it up a little bit until you get to where you want to cap off your retirement savings. Okay.
Let's go to Ray in Virginia Beach. Hi, Ray. You're on the air.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I enjoy this program.
Thank you.
I think somebody mentioned there earlier about 6 months savings you should have to save yourself in case you lose. I think that's a little bit too much from what I've done. I do some taxes and stuff like that. I deal with a lot of people. I think 2 to 3 months is normal, except in some strange situations where 6 months might be there. And to talk about generational wealth, I think that discourages people because the only thing I inherited was debt. And so I think it's just a matter of discipline and getting a skill and learning how to, manage money more than anything else. Only about 20% of the people that are wealthy get it from generational wealth. So I don't like to see people be discouraged. Over the years, I have got control of everything. I'm very well off right now only because I have been disciplined. And one of the things I use now, and this is for people maybe that are in a better position, is I use one credit card. And I use a cash back credit card, and I pay it off every month. That gives me money back from the bank every month. So that might be a thought that some people who are not really sunk, deep in debt that are coming out might be able to use as a tool to make a little bit of money on your credit card.
Thank you, Ray, for the call. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Andrea?
Yeah, Ray brought up some very good points. One is that the amount that you need in your emergency fund can vary. For example, if you have a very stable job and you know that you're going to get paid no matter what, you may only need about 3 months of an emergency fund. If you're self-employed and your pay depends on, what's happening in the world. For example, when the pandemic happened and all of a sudden, you are no longer working, you need 12 months of an emergency fund. So you want to pick a target. I think today I have about a 12-month emergency fund, but I didn't start off with the 12-month. I started off just trying to get 1 month and of my expenses, and then over time I continued to put money aside and build that up.
Andrea, one thing that's striking me about this is that you are constantly thinking about managing your money. Is that something that we need to encourage people to do?
Yes, it's not a one and done. It's not I do one budget and that budget is good forever. It's something that I do every month. It's not I only think about my money one time. It's something that I constantly, it's now has become part of my DNA. So as much as I was for spending money that I didn't have and running up debt, I've flipped over, and on the other side, I'm trying to, I remember I've told you I'm looking out for old Andrea so that when old Andrea retires, she will be able to, live a good life. So, January 1st, most people sit down January 1st and they put out, they think about their goals, and most of that stuff we don't do. Me too. I bought a exercise machine that I haven't used in a month. We all do that. So we need to pick things that are meaningful to us, focus on just one or two things. Once I had my plan in place for how I was going to build up my retirement fund, then I keep that going, and then I move on to the next thing that I'm going to tackle. So
take it in small chunks. Don't try to overwhelm yourself.
You can be overwhelmed if you try to hit all of your goals at one time. Mm-hmm. Start with one, then build on that. And you're right. It's something that you constantly have to be thinking about. Okay.
Let's see if we can get one more call in. Fred joins us from Roanoke Rapids. Hi, Fred. You're on the air.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing good.
I appreciate the time that you're going to give me on your broadcast. I know that in the last 10 years, my wife has been very instrumental on how we save money and how we're going to retire. 60 years old. But the best part is we found, like I said, the gentleman before me talked about a credit card. We pay for everything on one credit card, and then we pay it off at the end of the month. She's budgeted for the fact that we know how much we will owe every month. So therefore, we just pay it on our credit card and then pay off the credit card. And we get, I'm going to say, and I don't know if I can say the AMAZON word on your broadcast, but I mean, we have actually received thousands of dollars back in what they call their money to buy things online. Okay. If you can do that, to me, it makes sense. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay.
But we've received probably at least $800 a year back on Amazon credit cards
Okay, thanks, Fred, for the call, and I get your point. Let me let Andrea respond to it since we don't want to run out of time. Go ahead.
If you are disciplined like Fred and his wife are, there's no problem with that. If you're not disciplined like I was, there would be a big problem in my doing that. Now, today, I could probably do that. As I said, as soon as I make a purchase, I go ahead and pay it. But, you have to figure out where you are, and at the beginning of your journey, that might not be the right approach,
What about insurance? Life insurance, well, health insurance is one thing, but let's talk about life insurance and car insurance as an example. How do you know for life insurance, first of all, should it be term? Should it be whole life? What's the difference? What do you need to consider when you're looking at that?
Okay, well, what we need to consider is what is the primary purpose of life insurance? And the primary purpose of life insurance is to support those who are dependent on my income when I am no longer around. Okay, so I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I have young children who are dependent on me. So under those circumstances, I want to be able to replace, ideally, about 10 times my income so that when I die, that insurance money can be invested and then they can live off of the earnings. The cheapest life insurance to get that will enable me to do that is term life insurance, meaning I have a policy that's going to be I have a 10-year term, I have a 15-year term, I have a 20-year term. And the goal is at the end of my term, I'm debt-free, I have savings, and now I don't necessarily need to have that insurance policy to ensure that my family will be okay, And so I would recommend term life insurance if that's why you want to get it. Now, there are other policies. You can get a universal life insurance policy, which is kind of term plus a little investment, or you can get a whole life policy, which is one of the most expensive policies to get that also has a cash value or money back piece to it. I've had a universal policy, and I can tell you that putting money in my 401k did better for me than putting it in my universal life policy because it just did not perform as well. So if you're thinking of insurance to protect your family, you can get the most for the least amount of money if you use term.
But if you get a term policy, it does expire at some point. Do you have to keep renewing it or keep as you get older?
Okay, well, as you get older, first of all, yes, it does expire. So the first term you pick should be, I would pick maybe a 20-year term or a 15-year term. Now, your goal is to be building your wealth so that when the term expires, now your family has your investments to live off of, and they aren't needing that insurance policy to sustain them. So if you're doing that, then, you wouldn't need to renew your term.
Got you. Okay, that makes sense. We talked about banking. We talked about payday loans. Let's see what else. Investing.
Okay, right. This is my topic. Yes, because I really believe that we all need to invest in our futures. Yes.
Go ahead. And so how should we be investing?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, there are three things we need. We do need to have some savings. Okay, savings and investing are different things. Savings is for my short-term things that I'm going to need in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to save for a vacation. I'm not going to invest in that. I'm going to put my emergency fund in a savings account so that when the emergency happens, I can get to it.
And that's the reason why you put that in a savings account as opposed to investing.
Right.
Okay.
Investing, I'm investing for the long term. I'm investing for the future. I want to give my money time to grow. And so we're very conservative as a people when it comes to investing. We all know about CDs because our parents knew about CDs, and we're very leery of putting our money in the stock market. I'm going to recommend you're going to need both, but you're really going to need to put the majority of your money in the stock market. And let me give you some numbers why. If I put money in a CD, a great CD, I might get a 1% return. I might get a 1.5% return. The stock market, on the other hand, has averaged 10% yield over the last 100 years. Okay? But I don't want to invest in individual stocks, because I have to then be knowledgeable enough to pick who I want to get my stock with. Instead, I invest in mutual funds. This is what I do personally. And I typically use index funds, meaning I might do an index, a 500 fund where my index fund includes the top 500, stocks. So some are going to be going up, some are going to be coming down. Let me just give you just a little example. And we need to start sooner rather than later. But I go out to investor.gov, investor.gov, and this is where I ran these scenarios. So I ran a couple of scenarios of investing $500 a month for 30 years.
Okay.
If I put that money in a CD that was yielding 1%, so I just kept reinvesting my money in the CD, I would have over those 30 years contributed $180,000, and the value that I would have would be $210,000. So my growth would have been about $30,000.
Okay.
Whereas if I had put that same $500 a month in the stock market, in mutual funds, I still would have contributed $180,000. But if I even went conservative, I went below the 10%. If I only earned 8% on average, my future value would be $751,000. And that would have been a growth of $571,000. So $30,000 growth versus $571,000 growth.
How much do you need to figure out, though, and we only got a minute and a half left, about your aversion to risk? I mean, because is that something you have to consider as you're looking at the stock market, too? Like, how much are you willing to lose, I guess is the question.
Right. How much are you willing to lose? And so what you have to recognize is when you put your money in the stock market, it's like a roller coaster. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. But over time, it goes up. The biggest mistake that we make is as soon as it goes down, we decide to sell. And when we sell, we cement that loss. I once took a stock market class because I wanted to know more about it. And a broker who taught the class, he made this statement, and I always keep this in mind. He says, stock is the only thing people don't want to buy on sale. When stock goes down, you can get more for your money, and that's when you should be buying.
That's when you should do it.
It's the only thing that we don't want to buy on sale.
Andrea, your personal motto now is your financial present doesn't have to be your financial future.
Yes, it is. I try to make sure everybody knows no matter where you are today, that doesn't mean that's where you need to be tomorrow. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to turn your financial life around.
Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure talking with you this hour, and you've given some great advice to folks. And thank you, audience, for the pleasure of your company during this last hour. I hope something resonated with you to help you get on the path to financial wellness. Please share the show with a friend. Go to anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. And you can find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. And I think we have a little bit more time. You know what? I'm going to ask you one more question, Andrea, since we're coming up on 57. Never mind. We're looking at the times here. Next week on Another View, it's the Another View Roundtable with thoughts on how we can stop the violence in our community. This is going to be a very important conversation, and I hope that you will tune in and send us your ideas, because everyone right now is grappling with this situation. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer. And you know it, Dr. Barry Graham, he answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Hey, everybody, practice kindness. It will make our world a much better place. Let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice, whether starting your bachelor's degree or advancing your career. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.